We are live on Facebook, Valerie.
Hey.
Hey, Facebook people at home. You might have your clothes on, you might not. But I've got a don't ask, don't tell policy. That's right. Don't tell me. And I certainly don't want to know. As usual, you're at home kicking back, watching this after the fact, and that's all right. Share it because these are really nice clips so that you at home can get to know who comedians are off stage. And then you go, oh, Valerie, she's amazing. I really liked what she had to say about blah, blah, blah. And then you want to go and see her when you're on the East Coast. That's how this works. We're trying to get these people visible and not just where you happen to catch them on stage, where you get to know them and love them, and you purposely set out to go support their career in any way that you want, whether that's on social media, whether that's in person, whether that's going and finding their YouTube channel, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. So before we get started with today's episode with Valerie Libasci, we're going to talk about my sponsor. Yep. I'm a military veteran of the Army. Yep. And I'm now a proud member of the Veterans of Comedy, and they're my sponsor. So anytime you're looking for anybody who served our country to serve up jokes, go to veteransofcomedy.com. Their motto is to leave no laugh behind. And now, today's episode with my co-star, the amazing guest of mine of the day, is Valerie Libasci over there in the other square. Hi, Valerie.
Hi, Linda. How are you?
Doing good. I'm going to do your intro real fast now that you said hello to everybody. Thank you. So I want you to know that Valerie is an amazing comedian. She's performed all over the Long Island area in New York. She recently was featured in an article on Channel 12 out on the East Coast as a volunteer at a hospital. And she was featured because she uses comedy as a volunteer in the hospital. Isn't that amazing? It was a wonderful article. That's a big deal to be featured on the news among the gajillion of people that are out there on the East Coast. She was picked. So kudos on that, Valerie. She's a 4-year, yeah, you bet. She's a 4-year veteran of comedy. We're going to get into that. She went as a guest to a library show that I've been fortunate enough to get to perform on with Mark Breyer, Laughs at the Library. And she was there in the audience. And then she said, I can be funny. And she got Mark Breyer to help her. And he gave her first paid gig. She went out and won a contest in short order. And now she's found her niche out on the East Coast, doing senior 55 plus communities and temples. That kind of comedy is a good fit for Valerie. And we got to give it up to Valerie and let's get to know her right now. Welcome to the stage. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly because you know I forgot to ask. Welcome to the stage, Valerie Libasci. Woo!
Linda, thank you.
Did I botch your last name?
You didn't. I'm so pleasantly surprised. You said it the real Italian way because a lot of people pronounce it Libasci, Kilbasi, whatever. But no, you did a great job announcing. And, I just wanted to tell you when I did the feature for Channel 12 News, it actually, the main feature wasn't the comedy. It was about, I'm a cancer survivor. 5 years ago, I had endometrial cancer. And that was how I wanted to give back. And I started to volunteer in the hospital. But shortly after, I took stand-up comedy classes. So when I volunteer, when I talk to the visitors sometimes, they'll bless me for volunteering and whatever. And then we get into a conversation and I have a little bit on my phone. And I started doing this, and it took off. So the article was really supposed to be about volunteering, but then they brought that in, so it was like a double whammy. It was really a thrill to be on. So
That's wonderful. So let's tell everybody a little bit about you growing up. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Bronx, in a lower middle class neighborhood. In fact, I always say, I grew up in an apartment building in the Bronx with a lot of class, all low. you know. But I wouldn't trade my childhood. I lived there actually till I was 17. I still have that Bronx accent, and a good childhood. My mother's family came over from Manchester, England, when she was about 6. She was the youngest of 9 surviving. They had 11 children. 2 died when they were very young. They were not like the Queen of England. They were like more like the Benny Hill show. They were very, very funny, and everybody lived nearby. And we were just a funny family. And I know if I, even as a little kid, I mean, I didn't tell jokes, but if I could make people laugh or be silly or do this, that was just how the family was. So, so that was good. But in school, I was kind of shy. Like, I never wanted to be in a school play. I was the kind in school, if something was funny, I would, hit somebody and be funny and tell somebody on the side. I never had aspirations to be on the stage or anything like that. I get a little anxiety. Even now when I perform, it's really interesting because people tell me that, oh, you look so relaxed and natural. And I say, ask my husband, you don't see me like the whole day practicing, nervous. But when I get the first laugh, it's like a high. I just love it, so.
Yes. So after did anybody growing up in your family or at school think you might become a comedian?
I was always funny. I was always funny. And actually it was my last job before I retired. I was a receptionist at an optical company for 20 years. But I loved that job, and I don't like stress. So I got offered to be in sales, a lot of different positions. And what I did, I stayed in the same seat, but got a lot more responsibilities. I went to trade shows. I would interact with vendors and customers. And I kid around with, because I'm retired 5 years. I kid around with my old boss because I did a show for them recently during the pandemic, a Zoom show. And I said, I think the 20 years that I was working at the company was my audition for my comedy, because I had so much fun on the phones, because salesmen are very funny, so we would go like back and forth. My younger brother and my older brother, he wrote a book. Like, we were all creative in the house. My younger brother is a chiropractor, but he belongs to SAG, and he has done community theater. He stopped it now because with children and grandchildren, he's too busy. But so he was on the stage. I never thought about it at all, even though people used to say it. But what happened after I retired, my husband plays softball with Mark Breyer. It's just a small world. So we knew that he was doing this. And for once a month, I figured, it's funny. I'll meet like-minded people. And I went for a couple of months. And then, like I said to Mark, I think I could do this. So he said, bring some material. And I didn't even have anything original. It was, I think I read something, but I got applause. And my husband and I love to go to the comedy clubs. And so when so Mark offered me a paid job in the Elmont Library. This was after about 5 months. That particular library, my first paid job was in front of 306 people. It was crazy. I was so nervous that when I got the light, I didn't realize if it was shining for a half hour or 5 minutes. I stopped in the middle of a joke, and it was crazy, you know. But I got a lot of compliments afterwards, and I was on my way. And but what happened is, after performing at Mark's, I decided it was that day. This is how things are meant to be. Because I would go to the Governors and Brokerage Comedy Club, they would give it. I had my name on a mailing list, so I came home that day. There was free tickets with a flyer if you want to be a comedian to take this course, the stand-up comedy course with Rich Walker and Peter Bales. And
Wow.
I think it was $275. And I'm not such a sport, but I said, you know what? This is going to be on my bucket list, because I had already had my surgery and I was okay. So I'm going to do this once. And it was it was 6 classes. And the 5th class was a performance. People had to pay $15 to get in and 2 drinks, but there was only 10 people in the class. And I also make the joke that I had meat in my freezer older than my classmates, because I was almost 70 when I started taking the class. And they got a kick out of me because I was different. They were all so much younger, you know. And the 5th class, after we did the show, I had 22 people came to support me from work, my neighbors, my family. So it was a very friendly audience. And a week later, they had videotaped it and they critiqued the show. And I never told them anything about the cancer or anything like that. So, and I wasn't going to do it anymore, even though they laughed. I was just going to stick with the library, because there was no stress, and that would be enough for me. And just that I did this at one time. And they said, you have to come. The young girl said, you have to go to open mic. I said, I'm not doing that. You know, the library is fine. I said, you know what? I actually I had cancer last year. I wanted to do this at one time. I did it. It was thrilling, but it's not worth the anxiety. And then Mark gave me the paid job. Somebody else heard of me and this and that. And I got into it. I don't do as much as a lot of other comics with a lot of open, because I could be doing a free open mic or the library or a huge show. I put in the same effort to all of them. So
I believe it. So, is there a way you can turn down the volume on your computer? I get an echo when I talk.
you okay now?
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
Good.
So now you are going to these assisted living, senior communities, temples. Talk
Right.
about that niche market for you. How's that been?
Well, you know what? I'm comfortable with those, but I don't do as much as those as I do restaurants. You know,
No way.
I've gotten restaurants that I go to out east, and yeah, I do more restaurants. It just worked out that way. And I'll do I've done a lot of charity too. Like I've done for Ronald McDonald's house. Well, that was a Zoom show. But I have a cousin that was born deaf, and she had cochlear implants. So during the pandemic, when I had a Zoom show, she tuned in, and it was wonderful. She could hear it, you know, with the cochlear implants. So a few months later, she had called me, and she had asked if I could. She belongs to this hearing association. I can't remember the name offhand. If I could do a Zoom show for them. It was this whole chapter to volunteer, and I thought it would be great. And it was also it was hearing people and non-deaf people there. So they had a delay, you know, they had somebody printing the words and everything. And I did over a half hour myself on Zoom, and it was wonderful. So now I'm doing December 11th, I'm going up to Westchester. They're having like a luncheon for the holidays, and I'm doing that live with them. So that's like a great opportunity. So it varies what I do, but like I don't like to drive, so I don't like a lot of the people I know do a lot of shows in New York City, which is wonderful. But also, a lot of comedians are the women are single. Like I'm married, I have grandchildren. I have other stuff. So this started out like kind of as a hobby, but when I get a job and I get my little money, I buy my grandkids a toy, eat out or whatever. But I'm not as career oriented as some of the people that started earlier. But I'm having a blast.
That's wonderful. Oh my gosh. Have you thought about trying out for America's Got Talent?
I did actually
You
last year, I did, and I got a second interview. It was very exciting. I did, again, I wasn't going to go to the city, but during the pandemic, you were able to do it virtually. So I said, and even then I'm saying I probably don't have a chance, but it's virtual. There's nothing to lose. I had more trouble getting on with the password and being nervous about that than the actual performance. The thing that had me nervous, you can only do it for 90 seconds. And as you see, I'm a talker. So it took me that long to say hello. But when I auditioned, surprisingly, I got a really good reaction. And the first producer who heard me asked if I could stay on to meet with the second producer. So I got like really, really excited. They made me stand up and everything. And it was wonderful. And that was that. And I'm saying, oh my God, if that ever came to pass, because I did it not as a goof, but just to see how I would measure up. And apparently I did not make it, which was fine. I didn't have my hopes up about it, but it was just so much fun to audition and see the process, and lately, not that I knew the people per se, but there's been a few people on AGT who other comedians I know them, and so like I just find the world is branching out. Everybody has the same chance, as long as you push. Everybody has their own level. So
That's
yeah, that was
right.
fun. That was fun.
Well, what do you have in mind for the future? To continue with exactly what you're doing, or are you
Yeah,
thinking?
I'm very mellow. It's like I do a couple of jobs a month. Again, I don't push. It's like kind of word of mouth, and like sometimes maybe something will come. I haven't had I also did something like for the visually impaired, like somebody knew somebody and asked if I could do a favor. It was like a neighborhood restaurant and stuff. So I have one offer that's supposed to come up. It's not solid yet, but this organization for the hearing impaired, they're having their a mass meeting September 22nd, near in Glen Falls. It's near Lake George, and it's a weekend. And so they suggested me and my husband, can go up like for the Saturday night dinner. And meanwhile, we can have like a little mini vacation and stuff. And that blew my mind when I got it, because when I was a kid, we used to go to the Catskills, and if you saw, like if you had a show the night before, and then the next day, like if you because it wasn't the very fancy places, but if you would see the comedian from the night before, like you were starstruck, and I said, oh my God, that would be so funny if I did this. Like I still pinch myself, because I've gone a couple of places, in the from the volunteering, it's a local hospital, and then they know I do the stand-up. So I've gone like to the supermarket or someplace, and they'll go, "You're the comedian," and it makes me laugh. Like it still doesn't feel like me, that I'm getting paid for it at times, So I'm really having fun with it, But I don't know where it's going to lead. I'm like the tortoise, I'm not a go-getter, So
Yes.
we'll see.
Well, that's good, because the business side of things isn't as fun as the just doing the comedy.
Right, right. How
yeah.
long are you? I know you're supposed to ask me the questions, but I'm
ahead.
curious. How long have you been doing comedy?
7 years, March 13, 2014.
And did you take classes or you
I did.
okay.
My daughter and I my daughter decided she didn't want to talk to me, and she hasn't spoken since. And that day I was having trouble wanting to live. So I called the comedy club and I said, how'd you like to help me want to live? If I can make people laugh, I want to live. And it was one of those, want to die, want to live moments. And they got me in that day and sat with me. And every comedian that walked by before the show was told to sit down and help me write jokes.
Okay.
So it was a lot of fun, and it's been slow. I've been like a tortoise because I've been depressed about my daughter and I have a brain injury and I try my best. But the first 5.5 years, I really just helped the other comics go out on smoke breaks.
Okay.
Yeah. So just lately, things have gotten better for me.
Yeah. Well, we all have our journey, it's different paths with a couple of detours,
Yep.
and that's how it goes.
Yes. So tell everybody what you have coming up.
Well, I have, well, first of all, not comedy wise, but I have to have a cataract surgery next
Wow.
November 16th and November 30th. So I lucked out because I have a show in a temple November 8th. So that's right before it. And then I have a show in November 13th. That's in the Stony Brook Yacht Club. Like that's going to be a nice private thing. So that's coming up. Then December 11th, I have the show with the Hearing Association in Mamaroneck in a nice Italian restaurant, a luncheon. So I have that. And then I go to a couple of open mics, just to socialize a little bit. What happens when I get a couple of different shows, if I'm doing a senior thing or a temple thing, it's a little different than if I do it in a club. I mean, I work pretty clean. Occasionally there's something like a little edgy, but I don't use the F-bomb or anything like that, but some could be like a little edgy. So what happens is if I have two shows close together, but they're different type venues, how I rehearse, people think I'm so relaxed because I don't tell jokes. It's like a conversation. But I memorize it in a certain order. So I get a little nervous when I have two different scripts that I'm working on the same time if it's a couple of days apart, But that's how I prepare.
Nice. So where can people find you on social media? Where all are you at?
You know what? I'm only on Facebook. I hate technology. And you know what? It's funny because I don't know if I got hacked or what happened, but somehow I have two Facebook accounts for a very long time. And I really wanted to get off Facebook for a little while and get it straightened out. But I think you have to if I close them both, I think you have to be off for like 30 days or something. And that's where I get a lot of my information because that's the only thing I'm on. So it's word of mouth. I sit back, I work for a couple of producers. They know what I'm suited for. And, it's just at a very comfortable level for me.
Wow. So you're on Facebook as Valerie, Valerie Libasci, Libasci.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have any videos on
I have a video from my very first performance that I did when I graduated. Like it's on YouTube. If you put my name in, it's that. And I have videos that like when I've done a show, like my husband taped it, and it's like in our house, like we have it. I'll send it to my brother. I'll send it there. If if it's a new producer and they want to see something, I'll send it that way. But you know, I'm not. Again, I'm kind of amateurish at this. But you know what? Like sometimes people, it's different strokes for different folks. Like sometimes, you know, people are really work so hard. You know, I mean, they'll wait on tables to perform. You know, really like Mrs. Maisel. You know, like you see that type of thing, which a lot of people call me like kidding around. If I started in here, if I started when I was much younger, I would have more ambition. I love that I'm having fun at this stage of life, you know, and it's funny on the sets when, you know, because some of the comedians are the ages of my sons, you know, you know, so it's fun, but I'm not schlepping all around like, you know, some of the people are as much. But as it falls in my lap, you never know, you know. But this is where I am for right now.
I love it. I think it's a real success story.
You know what? I think it's funny because I think not pushing, sometimes things come to me actually without all the pressure of rejection. Because I don't like rejection. And so if I don't ask and they ask me, you know, it's less stressful for me, you know. So
Absolutely. Well, what would you like to tell people at the end of your interview about how they should treat each other, how they should handle their comedy business? Anything from your experience that you'd like to see be done better in the world or in comedy?
right. Well, you know what? I think everybody should be their best selves, you know, to not really be in a lot of competition with other people because I think that's stress. You know, because I'm not in it as much, I haven't really had issues. But you know, sometimes I see things on Facebook that are not nice. You know, and it's funny because I know a lot of people, and sometimes like something will be mentioned, and like I don't like to see anything like that. So I think, you know, I just keep trying to improve myself if I can. You know, at the library when laughs at the library, as people came in, and Mark, when he would announce me, you know, he would always say, you know, Val started here in the audience and then, you know, she took classes. So a lot of new people, when they came to the library, had asked me about the classes. I gave them all the information about the classes. Some of them are performing at the library now. I gave them numbers of other comedians, you know, producers, you know, or whatever. Like I'm willing to help anybody out, but maybe that's because it's my age, you know, I'm not as whatever, but I just feel like have fun. Like just have fun. I've had, I mean, I like to get paid and that's nice, but I have had sometimes more fun at jobs with just a lot of laughs, no pressure, you know, when I've done a charity stint and it's really been appreciated, or with the people in the hospital and their families, or during the pandemic when, you know, we were online at the deli counter. I must have hit a day. Like just people were funny. Like we were all like, like it lifts your spirits, you know. Just don't be so serious about life and just try to be kind, you know. You notice I talk a lot, but I try to do the motto, you know, before you say something, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Now, for me, most of the time I'm kind, but I used to think if something was true, that it was necessary. But no, not everything's necessary. So, you know, I try to measure my words a little bit. I don't always succeed, you know, but yeah, it's a tough world out there. So try to be as kind as you can. You know,
I like
that's
that a
my
lot.
message.
Well, thank you so much for letting me get to know you and my friends and fans get to know you. And you guys follow her. And if you're on the East Coast, send her a message when you get there. Tell her when you're coming, see where you can go support her career. check out her YouTube. It's Valerie Libasci, just like her name, just like she is on Facebook. Libasci. It's like an eye chart.
Linda, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm very flattered that you asked me to be on the show. You're a
I'm
great,
sorry it took so long to get you on.
you're a great interviewer. And the very first time I heard you, I didn't even realize you did comedy. You were interviewing my dear friend Les Deegan.
I
And
love
it was
him.
I was out walking and it was such a good interview, and that was and then I saw you after that, but I had heard your interviews before I had even heard that you do stand up actually, so
That's
so
so
thank you.
great. You know, when I hear the name Les Deegan, I tear up because I was doing a weekly show at the VA hospital on 23rd and First Ave for about 5 or 6 months. And Les came and he entertained the troops there. There was
Wonderful.
probably 20 people, and he made 3 or 4 men have to wipe their eyes in his performance. And so Les is so special to me.
He's Mr. Congeniality for sure. He's one of the
Yes, what a
nicest guys,
doll.
right?
Yeah, he is. Support his career too, folks.
Right.
Les Deegan, Degen. Well, thank you so much, Valerie. I'm going to head out, and I can't wait to come on a library show sometime on Zoom, or
Okay.
when all the things lift and I can come out to New York and
That
get
would be
into
great.
a building safely, I will.
That would
But
be great.
I'm allergic to the shots. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I'm deadly allergic to
Oh,
the
wow.
shots.
Okay.
So I'll have to wait.
Okay, so just be careful. Okay, and thank you very much for having me, Linda. It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you, Valerie. You're
Okay.
awesome.
Bye-bye. You
Bye.
too.
Love you. Bye.
Love you too.